Welcome to another episode of Microsoft Knowledge Nuggets here on M365 FM. I'm your host, Mirko Peters. Today's topic is one that almost anyone working with Azure has run into. You spin up a new virtual machine, and the default is a public IP address with RDP port 3389 open to the internet. If you've been doing this for a while, you've probably asked yourself the same question I did. Is this really the only way to get into my server? Here's the thing. Every exposed port is a target, and ransomware gangs scan for open RDP constantly. It's not a question of if they'll find it, but when. By the end of this episode, you'll understand what Azure Bastion actually is and how it provides a better way to access your VMs securely. We'll look at the old way, why it's broken, and the better way, plus the new Entra ID integration that makes it even simpler than you'd expected. The old way, jump boxes, and public RDP. So let's start with the old way. The traditional setup goes like this. You deploy a VM, give it a public IP, and open RDP port 3389. Then you add a network security group rule to restrict who can get in. Maybe you limit it to your office IP range or a VPN endpoint. That's the basic pattern. But there's another model that's been around for years, the jump box. Think of it like a security checkpoint. You have to pass through it before you can reach the rest of your network. A jump box is a single VM that acts as a gateway into your private network. You RDP into that box first, and then from there, you hop to other servers inside your network. It's a simple idea that worked for years, and it still works in small environments today. The catch is that it only works if you harden it, patch it, monitor it, and never make a mistake. The problem isn't that it can't work, it's that it takes constant work to keep it safe. So here's the real problem. Jump boxes are just regular VMs. They need OS updates, antivirus, security baselines, and someone to manage all of that. They have public IPs with RDP or SSH ports exposed. Even if you restrict those ports with NSG rules, they're still discoverable. They still get scanned every single day. At scale, managing jump boxes gets messy fast. You've got multiple VMs across regions, inconsistent configurations, patch drift. One team hardens theirs, another doesn't. And the hidden cost nobody talks about is the hours of admin time spent patching, hardening, and troubleshooting these boxes. I've seen estimates around 3 hours per month just for maintenance. That's real money. So what if there was a service that handled all of this for you? One that removes the public endpoint entirely and gives you a cleaner, safer way in? What is Azure Bastion? So here's the simplest definition I can give you. Azure Bastion is a fully managed PaaS service that gives you secure RDP and SSH access to Azure VMs without exposing any public IPs on those VMs. That's it. No public IPs, no open ports, no exposed management endpoints. Think of it like a secure tunnel. You connect to Bastion over HTTPS, and Bastion connects to your VM privately inside the virtual network. Your browser talks to Bastion on port 443, the same port you use for secure websites. Bastion then talks to your VM using RDP or SSH, but that conversation stays inside your virtual network. The outside world never sees it. Now here's the key difference from a jump box. Bastion is not a VM. It's not something you patch or maintain. Microsoft handles all of that. The OS updates, the security hardening, the scaling, it's all taken care of for you. You just deploy it and use it. For basic use, you connect from the Azure portal right in your browser. No extra client software needed, no VPN client to install, no RDP client to configure, just your browser and your Azure login. Your VMs stay private, no public IP required, no RDP port exposed to the internet. And here's the thing about modern security models. Bastion fits into a zero-trust framework. Access is gated by identity and policy, not by network location. You don't get in because you're on the right IP range. You get in because you're the right person with the right permissions. Let's talk about how it actually works under the hood, because the architecture is simpler than you might think. How Azure Bastion works. Bastion deploys into a dedicated subnet in your virtual network, and that subnet must be named Azure Bastion subnet with a 26 or larger address space, about 64 IP addresses minimum, which gives you room for the service to operate and scale. That subnet is exclusive to Bastion, so nothing else can live there, no VMs, no other services, nothing. This keeps things clean and secure, and you know exactly what's in that subnet and what it's doing. And when you connect through the portal, your browser opens a TLS session to Bastion's public IP on port 443, encrypted so nobody can see what you're doing. Then Bastion initiates RDP or SSH to your target VM over the private network, so the VM sees the connection coming from inside the virtual network, not from the internet, and it doesn't even know the outside world exists. Bastion can serve VMs in the same VNet, in peered VNets, and with the right SKU, even on-premises machines connected via ExpressRoute or VPN. That means you can use one Bastion deployment to reach VMs across multiple networks, as long as they're connected and in the same tenant. Now, a smart way to lock things down further is to use network security groups to only allow RDP and SSH from the Bastion subnet. That way, even if someone somehow got onto your virtual network, they still couldn't reach those management ports. They'd have to go through Bastion, which means they'd need the right identity and permissions first. This alone is already a big improvement over jump boxes. But there's a new feature that takes it even further, and it's all about identity. The Entra ID integration. This changes everything. For years, There was one catch with Bastion that bugged a lot of people. You still needed local VM accounts, usernames, passwords, or SSH keys that you had to manage on each machine. So while Bastion solved the network security problem, you were still stuck with the old identity problem. Different passwords on different VMs, accounts that never got cleaned up when someone left the team, the whole mess. Then in 2025, Microsoft changed that. They added native Entra ID authentication for Bastion, and it changed everything. Now you can log into a Windows VM through Bastion using your work identity, with no local account and no password to remember. Just your Entra ID credentials, the same username and password you use for your email, your Teams, your SharePoint. That's it. Entra ID brings MFA and conditional access policies to your VM login. So the same policies that protect your email and your apps now protect your servers. If your company requires MFA for accessing sensitive data, that same MFA prompt shows up when you try to RDP into a VM. And if your conditional access policy blocks sign-ins from untrusted locations, that applies too. Your servers inherit the same security posture as the rest of your environment. There are a few requirements you need to know about. The VM has to run Windows 10 20H2 or newer, or Windows Server 2022, and you need the AAD login extension installed on the VM. You also need the right RBAC roles assigned to your users. There are two roles here: Virtual Machine User Login for standard access and Virtual Machine Administrator Login if someone needs admin rights. It's a clean separation that lets you give people exactly the level of access they need, nothing more. When everything is set up correctly, Entra ID shows up as the default authentication type in the Bastion Connect blade, and it's just one click to get in. No typing a username, no hunting for a password, no copying an SSH key. Just click and connect. This is where the old Jumpbox model really falls apart, because with Bastion and Entra ID together, you get something a Jumpbox can never give you. Identity-based access backed by your full security stack, not just a local account on a VM. SKUs, pricing, and real-world reality. So let's talk money. Everyone wants to know what Bastion actually costs. There are 4 tiers: Developer, Basic, Standard, and Premium. Developer is free. It's meant for testing, not real work. You can only connect one VM at a time, and it runs on shared infrastructure. Great for learning, but don't put anything important there. Basic starts around 0.19 per hour, about $140 a month. It works for small setups, but you lose a few things. No native client support, no file upload or download, no shareable links. Fine for basic portal access, but nothing fancy. Standard is $0.29 per hour, about $210 a month. That comes with 2 instances by default. And this is where you actually get the good stuff. Native client support, so you can use your normal RDP or SSH client instead of the browser. Shareable links for temporary access. File upload and download. IP-based connections to reach on-premises machines through ExpressRoute or VPN. Premium is $0.27 per hour, about $200 a month, also with 2 instances. Yes, it's slightly cheaper than standard per hour. Premium adds session recording and private-only deployment. That means Bastion itself doesn't need a public IP. That's a big deal for compliance-heavy environments. Now here's the comparison that really matters. A Jumpbox VM might only cost you $35 to $50 a month in compute and storage, but that's not the real cost. The hidden costs, patching, hardening, monitoring, managing that VM, often push the real total past $200 a month. 3 hours of admin time at $60 an hour is $180 right there. Add the VM cost and you're at $220 or more. So Bastion Standard at $210 a month starts looking pretty reasonable when you factor in everything you're not paying for anymore. For most production environments, Standard or Premium is the right call. The cost difference between them and a properly maintained Jumpbox is small, and the security and operational wins, huge. Let's put it all together and see how these pieces fit into one clear picture. The big picture, how it all connects. Let's zoom out and see how this all fits together. The old model looked like this: a public IP on your VM, an open RDP port, a Jumpbox that needed constant care, and local accounts scattered across every machine. Each piece was a separate problem you had to solve. Network security, patching, identity management, credential rotation, that's a lot of moving parts. And if any one of them failed, you had a breach. Now look at the new model with Bastion. No public IPs on your VMs, no exposed ports, a managed service that Microsoft keeps patched and hardened, and identity-based access with MFA and conditional access. Suddenly the complexity drops off a cliff. Here's how the pieces divide the work. Bastion handles the network security layer. It's the how you get in. It makes sure your VMs are invisible to the internet and that every connection goes through a secure, managed tunnel. Entra ID handles the identity layer. It's the who you are and are you allowed. It makes sure only the right people with the right permissions and the right device posture can connect. Together, they give you something no Jumpbox can match: a clean separation between network access and identity control. You don't need to trust the network. You don't need to trust the IP address. You trust the identity. And that identity is backed by your full security stack. This is the direction Microsoft is pushing. And it's the direction cloud security is heading. The real power isn't any individual product, it's how they work together. Your first steps: getting started with Bastion. So where do you start? Let me give you a simple path. First, you need to decide whether you're starting fresh or migrating from existing jump boxes. If you're starting fresh, you're in the best position. But if you're migrating, don't worry. Bastion can coexist with your existing setup while you move things over. Next, pick your SKU. The developer SKU is free and great for testing, but for production, go with standard or premium. The cost difference from basic is small and you get features you'll actually use. Then you deploy Bastion into your virtual network. Create the Azure Bastion subnet with a 26 address space, configure your SKU and deploy the service. That's the bulk of the work done. After that, if you want Entra ID login, enable the AAD login extension on your Windows VMs and assign the right RBAC roles to your users. You'll need virtual machine user login for standard access and virtual machine administrator login for admin access. That's it. Finally, and this is important, remove public IPs from your VMs and lock down your NSGs to only allow traffic from the Bastion subnet. If you leave a public IP on a VM, you've undone most of the benefit. Here's the single most impactful move you can make today. Enable Entra ID authentication on your most critical VMs first. That's where you get the biggest security win. The VMs that store customer data, financial records, intellectual property. Start there, get comfortable with the workflow, then roll it out across your environment. So that's the system, 3 pieces that replace the old way of remote access. Once you see how Bastion, private networking, and Entra ID fit together, the fix is obvious. Start with Entra ID on your critical VMs. That's your most impactful move today. Subscribe for more breakdowns like this and drop a comment if something clicked.